Welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour, a podcast where we talk to the most interesting people in the world of pop culture and everything in between. And this week on the show, we've got some people that really were influential and had so much to do with the way music looked. I hope I piqued your interest because you're going to love this. Welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour. Ryan, my co-host, dive in here with me right away because we've got a lot to unpack on this episode. We've been so busy. And we've got we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot that we've been doing. We got a lot that we're about to hit the ground and do. But this is an interview that we've been sitting on for a little while. And I love the way this one came together because let's face it, you and I, because of this podcast is very diverse and we get to talk to so many different types of people. We never really know what's coming. You know what I mean? Sometimes we're offered stuff that is a little outside of, I don't want to say our comfort zone or outside of our box, because I don't like to think of us being in a box, but sometimes we're offered stuff that's a little on the fringe of what we might normally do, but it's still very interesting and adjacent to a lot of the stuff that we talk about. And when we talked to Monty Melnick, who is the longtime road manager of the Ramones, we had gotten a message from a guy named Spencer Drate. And Spencer was mentioning to us that he was a good friend of Monty's. And started sending us some of his work that he had done. And I don't know about you, but I was blown away.
Absolutely.
And so this week on the show, we've got Spencer Drate and Judith Salavetz. Now, you might not know them as household names, but if we were to show you some of the album covers that they've done, they have really worked with a veritable who's who of rock and roll. So I think it's really cool that we have them on the show. I think it's super unique. And I know that you are someone that is absolutely totally had a deep dive love into vinyl over the last little while. So I know.
Yeah. I'm nodding my head. There's a heat wave in Montreal right now. So I'm just like, I'm dripping with anticipation for this episode.
And sweat.
Precipitation, all the anticipation. It's dripping. That's what I'm going to tell you. It's dripping off me.
All right. Well, let me do a couple of things before we get into anything, because I have a few things I want to talk about. But let's just thank the people that help keep the lights on here at the Rockman Power Hour. And we would not be able to do this without the good folks over at Heartbeat Hot Sauce, the heartbeat of the Rockman Power Hour. Use our promo code Rockman20 and get 20% off your entire order of hot sauce. This is a standard one that I use all summer long, the dill pickle serrano. If you're doing a barbecue and you've got burgers or hot dogs or whatever you're putting on the grill, if you've got, let's say, chopped egg salad, if you've got a tuna salad sandwich, anything that you use that normally a dill pickle flavor would make better, this will make that much better with a bit of a kick. I love this, Ryan. I put it on everything. And
Me too. Dill pickle is the crowning achievement of Heartbeat Hot Sauce, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of flavors and they're all great, but dill pickle, there's something that connected with Melissa. We put it on bagels. We put it on the cream cheese, the vegan cream cheese. Everything. It makes every meal better. It's insane. It's part of my blood type at this point. Yeah.
Definitely check out Heartbeat Hot Sauce and use our promo code Rockman20 and you'll get 20% off your entire order. So thank you to Heartbeat Hot Sauce. Thank you to our friends at Studio House Designs. Ryan, this is the wonderful Thing shirt from the Thing collection my friend Cody did from Studio House Designs. And they are a wonderful company out of Philadelphia who make great shirts. So thank you to them. And thank you, of course, to our friends over at Audio Technica Canada. We got to spend a little bit of time with them at Montreal Comic-Con. And we're going to be talking a bit more about what we're going to be doing with Audio Technica in the coming weeks, because we've got this great idea when it comes to their Soundburger and vinyl, and that all ties into what we're talking about today. So thank you to them. Thank you to Mike Marino and the whole team over at Audio Techno Canada. They were at Montreal Comic Con. They had a booth at Montreal Comic Con, and great booth, great stuff. People were able to get their hands on the gear, try some stuff out, and it was a huge success. So thank you to them for helping us be that much of a better podcast. We appreciate
the burger is fascinating to look at.
Yeah.
Like it's really just, it's fascinating. It's the only record I think that my friend Dave, the only record player in the world I think my friend Dave would actually ever give a shit about, because it kind of looks like a buzzsaw, like the way it plays a record. And it's fascinating, but it's beautiful and it's accurate and leveled and like all those little things that you guys who care a lot more about that technical proficiency than I do. I'm still at the poser level, but I'm working my way up. But before, dude, I have this fascinating story I want to tell you where, like you find some gems in a basement. But before we jump into that, something very unique happened in the rock part of the Rockman. Even though that's your birthright, everyone thinks that's a made up name.
Yeah, it's not.
My last name is fake. Your last name is totally real.
Yeah.
You did this incredible thing where you interviewed Geddy Lee on stage and at the festival.
D'été de Quebec. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me all about that? Because I've actually, even though we're friends, I've actually purposely not asked you shit about this. So all my reactions right now would be genuine.
Yeah. So, okay. So to in a nutshell, very briefly. So you and I, we did this really cool project along with Kevin, my friend Kevin from of Slaves on Dope. We did this really cool project during the pandemic called the Kings of Quarantine. We gathered some of the biggest names in rock and roll and we put together these covers. We did 4 of them. All of the artists, this is during the pandemic when everybody was locked down, no one could do anything. So all the musicians that we got involved with this project sent their stuff into us. Kevin Smorgasbord and Frankenstein, these incredible recordings.
Guy's a genius.
Really
Total
is.
Genius. Yeah.
And you did the same with the videos that they sent. And we had these very successful videos. Like I've done, one of them is close to getting 1 million views on YouTube.
Wow.
It's nuts. So really successful. And one of the guys that we got involved with this was a guy named Yeti, Chad Ward from Roadie Relief. He started this thing called Roadie Relief. And what Roadie Relief did was we raised all the money from the recording. We put the songs up on Bandcamp, and the royalties from the recordings went to help out of work roadies. So I had never met this guy Yeti in real life, but we had become friends. And over the last 3 years, we've been friends. We chat all the time. He is with the Zac Brown Band right now, who are a massive country band and one of my mom's favorites. So to give you the reason why I'm going here is I want to tell you why I was in Quebec City. Originally, I was going to Quebec City at Festival d'Été de Quebec to take my mom to see the Zac Brown Band. And this was on a Thursday night. And Yeti had arranged tickets for us and got my mom right on the side of the stage in front of this crowd that had, like, there was over 80,000 people on the Plains of Abraham watching the show. It was bananas. And my mom had the best night of her life. But about 2 weeks before we went, I got a call from my friend Geneviève Bourne. And you probably remember Geneviève from Musique Plus. She was a VJ there for years. We're very, very good friends. And she reached out to me. She goes, "Hey, buddy." And this is how she says, she's like, "Hey, buddy." Like I can hear when she says it, because she types it the same way with a bunch of Y's. And she's like, "How do you feel about coming to Quebec City and moderating an in conversation with Geddy Lee?" And I was like, yes. Geddy was doing 2 performances of My Effin' Life, which is his new book that he wrote. He was doing one at 1 p.m. and one at 4 p.m. And they chose myself and Geneviève Bourne to be the hosts. So here I am. I'm already going to be in Quebec City. So I reached out to the festival and they're like, "Perfect. We'll put you up an extra night and we'll pay for a train ticket for you to come back." And I did that. And my mom ended up staying with me, and I got a room with 2 beds, and my mom stayed an extra night, and we ended up having a really, really good time. But I got to do something that blew my mind, because I interviewed Geddy once before. As you probably know, I'm a huge Rush fan. I love Rush. And I got to interview Geddy probably about 3 or 4 years ago when I worked at Show'em. But the thing that really meant a lot was that I don't work at Show'em anymore. I don't work in radio. I don't work for Bell. I'm an independent contractor, if you will. My only media outlet is this. And I got chosen on my merit of, I guess, talking. And it was just nice to do this with Geddy and to be able to spend an hour and a half with him on stage in front of an audience, have that connection.
An hour and a half?
was 90 minutes.
Dude, I've hosted things at Comic-Con, by the way, which is a dream. It's my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah,
I'm so grateful. But that's 45 minutes, an hour and a half, man. And to be on at all times and to make sure that everyone in the audience is having their moment, I'm like, I tip my hat to you and I give you a little bow because an hour and a half is the length of most horror movies. So please continue. Yeah.
It was intense. It was super cool because I've never done this before. They had the little like burger, I call them the Burger World mics, and I kept making that fucking joke in front of Geddy Lee.
Were you like the Hanson drummer?
I had the little mic here, and I kept going, "Welcome to Burger World. Can I take your order?" And I think he was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" But it was great because it allowed you to really be animated and have your hands around. It was just nice. So, and as soon as I walked out on stage, I felt like I was doing a TED talk because I'm so used to doing this, right?
Yeah. It's a comfort zone thing for me, actually. I feel better when I'm holding a microphone.
Usually I would, but having it free was so fucking nice. But
it's easier to knit. It's easier to juggle this way.
It really is. And I would imagine if you're ever having, like, let's say you're getting a lap dance while moderating a panel, like you would definitely want your hands free. So
yeah,
it's a win-win all around, no matter what scenario you're in. I don't know why the lap dance one came up, but I was just wanted to have hands free. It was a wonderful experience. I loved it. And I'm very grateful to my friend Genevieve for suggesting me. And she went on after and killed it. Jim Cuddy from Blue Rodeo showed up because he was playing that night and ended up showing up just to watch in the audience. And he was backstage and my mom was there. And my mom is a huge Blue Rodeo fan.
Nice.
Like massive Blue Rodeo fan. I've gotten my mom tickets for Blue Rodeo 4 times. And when Jim Cuddy showed up, my mom turned into like a fucking schoolgirl.
When Jim Cuddy showed up, you turn into Jim Kerr. You turn into yourself when Jim Kerr shows up.
Pretty much. My mom was just like, and then after the Getty's second Q&A with Jen, he invited us into his room to have a drink, and we were sitting, and I told him, I go, I have to give you full transparency. I go, like, my mom had no idea who Rush was and who you were. She just thought it was cool that I was doing this important thing. But when Jim Cuddy showed up, she freaked out and he laughed so much. But so thank you for asking. It was a very, very cool experience. And I was really, really, I'm still like kind of pinching myself that it happened. It was pretty fucking special.
Well, just not just as your friend, but just to say, I think you're extremely qualified to do this. But I understand when you're doing it as a part of a media outlet and it's kind of an expectation, but now it's kind of like they're calling you like you're Rambo in the woods chopping wood, and they're like, hey, we need you, man, to solve. Yeah. We need you to fix this. And
it was nice. It was really, really nice. It was
kind of Genevieve. That's very cool for her to even think of you and stuff.
Jen's been a mentor of mine ever since I started in this business, in this part of the business. And she's always someone I would go to, and I've gone to in the past for advice. And, what do you think of this? And she was, she's been instrumental in a lot of things. So, really nice, man. I'm fucking great memory. So, I think one of the nicest things, to be honest, was, and I know you get this, was spending time with my mom and getting to having a weekend with my mom, getting to show my mom Quebec City, which is really one of my favorite places to go visit. I absolutely love Quebec City. I love everything about it. I love walking in Quebec. I love the culture. I love the restaurants. I love the fact that I'm from this province and I feel so connected to Quebec City when I go. So, it just was a win-win all around, dude. And that festival, Ryan, if you ever get a chance to go, it is the fucking best. I got to see the Box on Friday night when I had my night off. You know how much I love the Box, and it was just great. We have to have Jean-Marc from the Box on this podcast. We really got to do that. That'd be really, really cool.
Look, man, I think everybody should be on this podcast as long as like you and I are stoked to talk to them. It's like, are we allowed to say stoked still? Is that it's not an outdated term?
Hey, I just talked about having a Burger World microphone on while getting a lap dance. So we think we can talk about whatever we want on this podcast.
Dude, before we jump into this thing, we got to talk about, it all comes back to the art, album art. I think you and I both pre-streaming, and I think there's a reason why I've only given, it's not that I don't give a shit about music anymore, but the reason why it was like such an addictive thing to just get back into vinyl is that I haven't felt like owning an album has been important to this extent when having a record than since I was probably maybe 17 years old. And I'm 40 now. It's been a while. But
Right.
with the advert of downloading and stuff and the convenience, it just kind of like said a CD to me, unfortunately, was just kind of a stepping stone away from just being on my computer, being on an iPad slash the iPhone, and
Yeah.
kind of devalued the entire process. So the vinyl, not only is it a physical entity, but it's something I have to pay attention to because it's going to run out, and
Sure.
it's going to, and I have to turn the side over, and it's difficult to switch songs in a sense. And all the power to the DJs in the 1970s when you're figuring out how to fucking scratch with hip hop. Jesus Christ, that looks fucking hard.
Yeah.
I drop a needle like a nervous wreck. I'm like, ah. So anyway, I gotta say, album art especially used to matter so much to me, especially in
Mm.
this, even in the CD world, but especially, I don't know, it used to make me feel more connected to the music. The music could sound heavier based
Mhm.
on the colors they chose.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, no. Like it's there's certain things with like physical media and with records that don't. I mean, when you reduce your art to like a little fucking box that you see on street, it's just not the fucking same thing, dude.
No.
And I think it's one of the reasons why people love getting like like getting a record. It's the whole packaging's everything, and it's a. I don't want to say it's a lost art. I just think it's an art that people don't realize how important it is until they actually hold something in their hand that means something to them and goes, wow, this is fucking sick. You
Yeah.
know?
There's also, you said art. Ironically, a lot of people even use album covers as art in their house
Yeah.
because if you buy a really cool secondhand record on Facebook Market and it didn't break the bank, it's a little better than having a poster, to be honest. Even
Mm.
though I think all vinyls should be listened to, there is a way of, having your cake and eating it too. You can put your cover on the wall and you can actually keep listening to your record, of course. But I gotta tell you, I've been like buying up stuff on Facebook Market. There's this dude in Laval that's got an amazing collection. I've met some really nice people that
Yeah.
have really, it's been a nice exchange.
Sure.
But my sister mentioned weeks ago, she's like, "Oh yeah, I have some old vinyl in, mom and dad's basement. If you ever see it, have at it. It's some of dad's
Mm.
old stuff, some really old stuff. I'm not going to use it. Go at it." So I'm thinking, maybe I'll find some nice stuff. And then I found this. Now, the
Let me see.
first record does not reflect my dad's musical taste. I'm assuming this had more of my sister's influence, but it's still an interesting record to have. So right here, and everybody listening on the podcast version who feels really like they're getting half the experience, I will say the record out loud. But I have the Footloose soundtrack.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
And it is amazing, especially
Yeah.
Holding Out for a Hero,
Yeah.
kick-ass stuff.
Yeah.
Back in the era when the soundtracks are actually better than the movies, they age better than the movies.
Mhm.
Rolling Stones' "Tattoo You."
Great album.
That's a great album.
Are the vinyl in good shape?
Yeah, decent
Oh, you have
shape,
sticky fingers.
Yeah, I got
Does
sticky
it have
fingers.
does it have the zipper?
I believe so. Yes, it does. Yeah,
It zips?
has the
That's
actual zipper on it. It's
that's
the
fucking yeah, dude.
original master recording. My dad used to work at Sam the Record Man back in the day, so all
That
these
looks
records.
fucking good shape, dude.
Yeah, it's my dad used to work for Sam the Record Man, so
Mm.
some of these are imports. I found this Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really surprised at this. This next one's fun.
You know what I love about that album cover? The fucking
one?
people that got upset because they thought that it was a Pride album cover. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you, dude? It's like
Yeah, I know.
that-
Then I have Star Wars. I believe this is a double LP,
yeah.
and you gotta love Star Wars.
Have you seen the gatefold? Have you seen the gatefold of that Star Wars? Open it up and show.
I probably did as a
Open it up.
child.
It's sick. Look at all the pictures. Yeah.
This is crazy, man.
Yeah,
Here,
look
I'll
at the
get my
pictures.
own close up. I don't usually do that.
Yeah, it's some great stills from the movie. I had that when I was a kid.
Then I got this Yellow Submarine, the Beatles.
Dude, you got some great stuff.
I know. Seriously, this was just in a box doing nothing. Ziggy Stardust.
Oh fuck.
Yeah.
Well, all those original master recording ones, like the ones that had that on the top, are really, really usually clean recording. Like that's nice. That's super cool.
Then there's a little bit of a different one, but still beloved from my house. It's Christmas Eve on Sesame Street.
Yeah, nice.
This was my Black album as a kid,
Yep.
especially during Christmas time.
That makes a lot of fun. It explains a lot and it makes a lot of sense.
And last but not least, a single of Simple Minds, Don't You Forget About Me.
Fuck yes.
Yeah.
That's
Do you have
sick.
this one?
I don't know. I'd have to see. I had it when I was younger. Turn around, let me see the back. What's the B side? It's just the instrumental. No, there's two. Oh, a big a brass band in Africa is that's an instrumental. That's sick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say if you want this one,
No,
as
you
soon
keep
as I saw it,
you
I
keep
was like, I must give to Rockman if he wants, of course.
I mean, I have to. I don't think I have it, but I mean, if you're off,
Consider it. Call me up at 5 o'clock in the morning at any given time and be like, I changed my mind. I want it. I'll be like, sure, absolutely. As far as I'm concerned, it's yours until you claim it. So that's what I found in the. That's only some of it, actually. There's actually even more. There's more stuff. There's Genesis. There's a lot of really great
and
stuff.
that's all yours. Like it's all
Yeah.
you can have it all. Like
Yeah.
like your sister's not claiming like it's
No.
part of her birthright.
No, exactly. But isn't that the interesting thing where it's like one person's junk is another person's treasure? It just so happens that I was adding it up. I'm like, fuck, all these albums on Facebook Market would be $25 each minimum.
Yeah,
And on
no.
Discord's probably way more. So it's not about me wanting expensive stuff. It's just
No.
about, hey,
Well,
what a nice coincidence, because today sucked beyond that. So,
the original rock records are very expensive now. Now those records 10 years ago, some of them were fucking $3, $4, $5. Now everybody wants all the old stuff, so it's all getting bought up.
DVDs too, man. There's a fucking market for some old DVDs, which is weird because 10 years ago they weren't worth piss. Like it's crazy.
It's like anything if you hold on to something long enough. But that's super cool, man. And I've really my vinyl buying has grinded to a halt because literally, Ryan, all these things that I have here are full. Like I can't put another fucking record in. So it's almost like if I want to buy another record, I have to take one out to put another one back in.
Gotcha.
Like I don't have. I'm at critical mass, man. So it's like I've got to. I think if anything, I'm going to get to the thinning of the herd thing, like where I want to just thin out what I don't listen to. But yeah, man, when you start buying records, it's a lot of fun, and it all leads into our guests this week. I mean, let's face it, they are, a pair of graphic designers that were influential in so many ways to so many important bands and so many important records. So they did a really good job of explaining what they do. And they've got incredible stories. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to even talk about who they worked with. I just want to jump right into it. So I'm going to say is this, okay? If you are a fan of rock and roll, if you are a fan of alternative music, and I'm talking about influential artists, I'm talking about artists that laid the groundwork for what rock and roll and for what alternative music went on to be, they worked with those artists and they were very, very important in getting the artist's message across. That importance of holding up a record, the first point of contact in record stores, that record cover, that was all due to them. And they worked on some pretty fucking important records. So let's introduce our guests this week, Spencer Drate and Judith Salavetz. So really excited to have both of you here today to talk about something really unique, because on the podcast, we've talked to actors, we've talked to filmmakers, we've talked to loads of musicians, but we've never really talked to people that have helped create the things that are so important in an artist's career, and that's the album covers. Let's face it, all of us that have grown up, at whatever period of music we've grown up through or in, have had that album cover that was iconic, that we saw at the record store, that said something, that we picked it up and said, what is this? And the fact that we have both of you with us today is a real treat, because you both have been involved with, creating artwork for some of the most iconic rock albums of all time. I just want to start off by asking you, how happy are you to see a resurgence of vinyl again? Because it must have been the dark ages for you guys when it went down to CD, and then it went down to a small little thing on a MP3 player. I mean, artwork it's come back, and it's come back in a big way. And I think it's really fun when you get people that have created artwork over the years that get a packaging that gets remastered, that gets re-released, and then people get to see that artwork sometimes for the first time.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned, the Making Vinyl event is a very big thing for us because that's all about this resurgence. It started in 2017 by Brian Eckes and Larry Jaffe, and the event is every year at different places all over the world. They're in Nashville now doing it, but and they also have the packaging awards, which we've judged every year. So, and by the way, what's interesting, Jay, is and Ryan, is that the packaging is outrageous. I mean, now there's no control by the record labels to say we want this over there, these legal lines over there. The packaging, you do whatever the hell you want. And we did a package recently which had minimal type on it, great artwork. It's like that's the big thing too, is that it's like the 70s with the physical graffiti with the die cut windows, or some girls with the die cut whatever. We're talking about a generation now which is really into that special paper stock and die cut stuff. It's amazing what's going on too. So added to that, which is really great. I mean, Billboard had this article last year. It was an amazing article on vinyl. And what the article said was that musicians like McCartney and Lady Gaga, giving two examples, press like hundreds of thousands of albums. And because of that and the sale of those albums, they were rocketed to #1 on the charts. That was the reason why they were. So there's this big influence. And you're right. I mean, we put out a book called 545s, which is supporting that vinyl surge,
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, we have like different 45, the history of 45 sleepers, almost like.
Sure.
And that, so in support of that, these books have come out also. So we're part of that. And I think what you're saying is really important, the vinyl resurgence, because it's so big right now, Jay and Ryan. It's just amazing. We're really happy because you're right. I mean, when I started, before I even met Judith, it was so depressing to work from an album cover, and all of a sudden you found that you had no inner sleeve, for instance. They cut out the inner sleeve. Then it was only a cover. And then the cover, you couldn't do anything with. There's no paper stock. You had to do a general glossy cover. That's it. End of story. It was very depressing. And then the CD, we'd have to talk about that. But I'll tell you something. The only area in the CD which was really good, which we were a part of, was special CD packaging.
Right.
So when we did something like this for the Velvet Underground, or we did a metal box for Lou Reed, this was incredible design stuff because they let us do whatever the hell we wanted. The money was outrageous, and that was the best area for the CD. Other than that, it was a dry area for us.
So if I may say something now to answer your question, I'm really excited about this resurgence. As a designer, as an art director, it's just it's amazing to see this happening right now. But I have to say, it's very, very different than when Spencer and I were working on designing LPs, album covers. It's different in so many ways. When I first met Spencer, he was doing, I don't even know if people remember what these things are, but he was doing paste ups and mechanicals. We were ordering type. We had to order. We didn't know what size the type was going to be, but it was exciting. It was, every step of the design process was exciting for us. And when I first met Spencer, I come from a different background. I studied graphics. I have a BFA, but Spencer and I hadn't designed album covers. I was a painter, a ceramicist, and he saw some of my work and thought, wow, he gave me an opportunity to design with him. He had already been designing album covers. So he was coming from a much more formal place than I, because when I joined up with him, I would try and suggest putting the type on the side of the album cover, and Spencer said, no. The record company's not going to go for that. It's got to be at the very top, so that when when it's in the bin, the record stores, remember they had bins.
Of course,
and then you could see the name as you're, flipping through the albums. The name is right at the top, so no names on the side or on the bottom or the center. It always had to be on the top, and eventually I convinced Spencer. I forgot which cover that was, Spencer. We did
Norwood. We did a cover for an artist named Norwood, and I'm MCA, and Judith says, let's put this the type on the side. I said, what? And I listened to her after she would say these things, and then I'd come back and do it. And she had, all along the way, Judith had these phenomenal ideas that other designers eventually adapted to. Actually, part of her, you'd see it on other covers that she did first. So she had, the Bon Jovi first album, for instance, she put a diamond in between Bon and Jovi. That little thing became,
we got it right here, Bon Jovi.
That became an identity. After that, they were taking the diamond and using it, even if they changed the logo. So her ideas were amazing, and then I just went with the flow after that.
By the way, with that album cover, when John came into our studio, can I tell that story, Spencer?
Oh yeah, definitely. You can tell that story.
So nobody knew who John Bon Jovi was. He came waltzing into our studio. He had a cassette tape of they were recording at, what was the studio?
Power Station. Power Station
in New York.
His cousin's recording
Tony.
studio. And he came in and he said, this is going to be our single. It's called Runaway. So we had a cassette player in the studio. So Spencer takes the cassette, because we always like to hear the music before we design. Sometimes it
gives you inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it works. So we're the three of us, John, Spencer, and I, are sitting there listening to Runaway on the cassette, and we talk about, we're gonna have a plan for the cover, the photo shoot, yada yada yada. And which, by the way, was my first and only styling. I styled them for that cover.
You styled him for this cover?
Yeah. Judith styled him for that cover.
Wow, look at that.
That was the first and last one for John and the band. But anyway, so after John leaves, Spencer turns to me and he says, oh my God, Judith, this is a disaster. No way. It's horrible. This is going nowhere.
No, it's even better than that, Judith. I have to address this. Judith said he's going to sell 1 million. And I came back and countered with, yeah, right. Thinking in my mind that Runaway was such a rinky-dink type of rhythm, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. For instance, I worked on Billy Squire's Don't Say No album, a monster album. And when I heard the tape, it was a no-brainer for me. These songs were unbelievable, but when I listened to John, for some reason, that song didn't hit me. But, here we go.
It also hit me the fact that there was this oh my God, he's so good looking.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It probably hit you also that he was drop dead gorgeous.
Right. Drop dead gorgeous. That's it. He was. And he was so sweet and so nice. And by the way, he was so excited about this album. He would come to our studio almost on a daily basis. He just wanted to be, we had a little couch and he would sit on the couch while Spencer and I would be at our drawing tables, and he would just hang out. And I had a son. My son was 3 years old, and I'd bring him to the studio when he was 3, and John would get down on the floor and start playing with Justin, my son, while Spencer and I were working on his, on his album cover. It was amazing. He really, even to this day, I think John Bon Jovi is a really sweet, kind, good guy. Good guy. He even brought his then girlfriend, who turned into, he ended up being his wife, a couple of times to our studio. So it was
there's a doc film out now on Hulu called
Yeah.
Thank You Tonight, which you probably all know about. And it has our album cover. You can see it a little bit on the first episode. But the interesting story about Runaway, which is in the doc, is that it got turned down by all the record labels, but then they sent it to a DJ who completely played it out of all over the place. And then fans started calling up and said, "Who is this band? What is this band?" And they got such a response that led to the signing. And our friend Arthur Mann was the lawyer. He called me up originally and said, "Do you want to work on? I just signed Bon Jovi and Cinderella. Do you want to work on Bon Jovi album?" I said, "Yeah." Well, actually, he asked me about the name. He said, "What do you think of the name Bon Jovi?" And the first thing I reacted was, I said, "It's like Van Halen, Bon Jovi, Van Halen." And you know what? Everything he talked about was Van Halen. He come into the studio and said, "Did you see the Jump video?" Everything was about, and after that, he used a stylist for Van Halen. Everything was Van Halen in his life. So that was very interesting too. The play,
Yeah. I gotta ask something just about Bon Jovi and the fact, it's named Bon Jovi, but there was 5 of them. Can you explain this, where you have John, and this mysterious lady, and then you have those other 4 guys that look like they're, no one's asking him to dance at the grade 6 graduation.
Yeah, just I'm glad you brought that up. That's an amazing album cover. Jeffrey Hargrave Thomas, who shot Billy Squier, Don't Say No album, and this album, was the photographer. And he had this idea of doing this panoramic wraparound shot, which I thought was phenomenal. I mean, you didn't see albums like that at all. You don't see a wrap. You see one picture in the back, one picture in the front. You never see a wrap. So I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And he set that up. And it was done on, by the way, Columbus Circle, if anyone wants to know a trivia question. It was done on Columbus Circle. And by accident, this is what's amazing on the picture, a truck came in the background with lights blasting. And that really made it rock and roll. And that came by accident.
Awesome.
So, these little things happen. But anyway, Jeffrey set up the shot. And that's why it's a wrap. And you got the band in the back and you got John in the front. So you got to turn it over anyway. You got to turn the album over anyway. So you're going to see the band because the songs are on the back cover, right?
But
it all played. Yeah.
But the girl in it she's not a part of the band. It was like sort of, she was, I don't remember offhand, Spencer, whose idea it was to have her there, but to give it some sort of sex appeal. But it was interesting because John was not happy with her being, with her face being visible, clear. So we had to kind of muddle her face out, so she didn't really see her face.
Yeah, actually, Judith, the record label didn't like it. That's what it really was.
I'm sorry. Okay, it was the record label.
Yeah, the record label said, "Who is that woman? She can't be on the cover. She's not part of the band."
So, there's only the other 4 guys have to live with being on the back, and this mysterious woman, this runaway, if you will, is getting all more screen time than they are.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that was kind of par for the course, especially in that era of bands. It was all about the front man, and I think that was usually, and I imagine that must have been an interesting thing when you did work with bands that didn't feel that way, and they were like, "Well, no, we're a band. We're not we're not just a lead singer with a backup band. We're an actual band." And I think it comes across in some of the other album, on the other album covers. You can tell that there were people that were a band. They weren't just the lead singer.
Like with Lou Reed, there were pictures supplied to us. For instance, like the New York album is a Lou's concept of 5 people in an alley, kind of behind a wall, which comes off of an old photograph, historic photograph.
That was his wife. No, that was Sylvia's concept.
Sylvia's okay. Yeah,
Sylvia Reed, who was his wife at the time. She was also the art director we worked with on that cover. And that was the original photograph, I believe, was a 1930s photograph of these men. They were standing in a food line or something like that during the Depression. And so the idea was using that photograph, recreating that photograph, but putting Lou's face on each one of those individuals.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it also I also made sure that the type at the top, which is a seems minimal idea, but it's really good, was the outline type, not a solid typeface, so that the background would show through and wouldn't take away from the photograph. And it seems to do the job. But you know, this album was a very poignant album in his life. It was a turnaround. It was a big turnaround album for Lou. He signed with Seymour Stein at Sire.
Yeah.
And this was a major album for him.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You know, at that point, you know, you've got Lou Reed, who was such an icon in the 70s. And, you know, he was, you know, you're getting the album comes out in like 89. And he's kind of like, oh, what's Lou Reed going to give us? And he was way deep into his career. But then I remember Dirty Boulevard was a really big hit for him. And
that's right. Yeah.
And it was nice because I think Dirty Boulevard gave people, a younger generation, kind of a glimpse of what Lou Reed was about, because Lou Reed could paint a picture with a song. He would write a song, he would perform a song, he would record a song, and you would listen to it and you were transported. You were there. You know, I've never done heroin, but man, I know what it's like. I listen to Lou Reed, and I remember Dirty Boulevard gave me that feeling when I heard that song, and it still does when I put it on. You know, it's just it's special. So yeah, it's kind of cool that you were able to be a part of a record that a lot of people would have said, oh well, we're putting this out because we have to.
Yeah, I've got to give credit to the photographer Waring Abbott, who shot Lou in different places, and then I'd strip him in by computer. At that time, it was early usage of computer.
Sure. Yeah.
And then Warner Brothers would call me up and say, "Stop going to the computer place, Spencer. You're spending a lot of money." But it was like you had to do it. In order to make the shadows and all these things going on in the photograph, you had to spend a lot of time to make that picture look what it's supposed to look like, you know? So it was a lot of time involved in that. But Sylvia Reed, like Judith was pointing out, when we connected with Sylvia and Lou, it was a big thing for us. I mean, Sylvia was a great creative, and still is. She also, by the way, got a nominee for doing an album with Lou and oh my God, Songs for Drella. Yeah, she was an art director on it with Tom Rashan. But anyway, she's a totally creative person. So, but we blended together beautifully with her. And Lou loved everything. He never changed anything, by the way. Never changed anything. So it was like this beautiful graphic thing going on, design thing going on between the three of us. And the next album, Magic and Loss of the series, Louis Jamais in Paris shot Lou. Photograph was given to us, and then the typography went around it. But there were symbols involved with this that Judith and Sylvia consulted with each other. And that's a beautiful album too, Magic and Loss. And it resulted also in a wonderful limited CD, metal. This is pro only, so it wasn't commercially sold, but the CD is a metal box. And it's beautiful.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So
it makes physical media so much more important. I mean, for 20 odd years, especially CDs were just dying, and everyone just associates music with being this free thing on the internet. But with stuff like that, it's a reason to keep physical media alive. And I just hope with the resurgence of vinyl, even I hope CDs come back, and I hope they are like that too. Like, you know, it's not just an album anymore. It needs to exist on your shelf because not only are you proud that you know the music, but you're proud of the packaging.
You're exactly right, man. I got to tell you. So, and also, Judith and I judge the Making Vinyl event, and I've judged the Grammy packaging a number of years, and the entries in each one is unbelievable. I mean, each year it's like crazy stuff.
You were talking about the resurgence of vinyl, and it's so cool now because, and then imagine as artists, this is such a fun time for you because you have nobody telling, like, you, yes, of course, you don't have anybody telling you what you can't do. It's more like saying we can't afford to do that. So that's probably the shift. Back before, you had bigger budgets or better budgets. Now it's like, well, we'll do whatever you want to do, but we don't have the money to do it. So, but what I find really cool is, you know, we're talking about interesting things going on in vinyl. Alice in Chains put out an EP called Jar of Flies, and I've always been a big collector of physical media, and I remember in the jewel box they had these little fake plastic flies that were kind of in the jewel box, like on the spine, those spines that you could actually put stuff in. They repressed it for vinyl, and there was a company in the States that actually put dead flies inside of the record. They made 100 of them. They sold out.
Wow.
And I talked to the guy from the pressing plant, and he said it was one of the coolest things they were able to do. And he said it's such a great time to be pressing vinyl now because people want to do that kind of stuff again. So the idea of having a record spinning and he said like he goes, the biggest challenge was getting enough dead flies.
Oh, wow. Incredible. Yeah, I mean, we did an amazing show, a historic show in 1995 called a Special CD Packaging Show, simple like that. And we had 150 of the best special packaging. And I used to do articles on it, on special packaging in different major magazines, Ray Gun and Esquire magazine, name it. Anyway, we did the show, and the line was around the block opening night. And we had display cases. It was a gorgeous show at the One Club in New York. And it ended up, I had an interview in MTV. I was interviewed in Smithsonian Magazine, and they had a picture of some of the pieces. It was an amazing show, but it was all on special CD packaging. And they spent a fortune on each of these pieces to send out to people in different way, limited edition, pro only, or whatever, commercial. But it's nice to see, like, and today, by the way, a lot of your vinyl packaging is an amazing amount of money. I mean, they got big budgets on a lot of vinyl right now. It's not just an independent coming out with a vinyl. Big record companies have it on the A list, and they spend a lot of money on packaging. If you see a lot of the award winners in the Grammys, or especially this year's Grammy was won by Jerry Hyden, we interviewed, and our box set was called The Bird Project, a Grammy. And it's a whole bunch of vinyl with gorgeous illustrations of birds, unbelievable package. But a lot of record companies are just putting in that money, man, and just
they're mining the old catalog because when you can put out a box set for one record. And then have 7 different albums inside of there, Live in Paris 72, Live in New York 74, whatever. And then, the outtakes and all this. I mean, they really stretch it. But there's people that'll line up to buy those. And a good example was Metallica. Like every record in the catalog has been getting a re-release box set where, you can have the simple vinyl, you can get the expanded vinyl, and then you'll have the box set. And that has just everything in it, recreation posters and all that. And collectors want that, collectors want that extra special fun stuff. I was going to ask you, Judith, what has been the most ridiculous thing someone has asked you to put together for a packaging and that you've just been like, huh? How do you want me to do that?
No, we never had that.
Nothing?
I don't think we had that, Judith.
No,
we never had that.
I think it was our friend. I'm having a senior moment. Spencer, help me out here. The blue John Paris. Yes. Okay, so I did. It's him. It was him. It was a cover I did for this blue. He's an amazing, I have to say, blues musician.
Okay.
And I worked on an album cover for him, but the mistake I made was allowing him into my. At the time, I wasn't working in our studio. We had given up our studio at that time. I had a loft, so he would come to my loft, and he wanted to sit next to me as I worked on the design.
That sounds horrible.
It was. It was the worst. That was my worst experience because.
Yeah, I think we've been lucky. I mean,
it turned out pretty awful. The cover turned out awful.
Because
I don't want my name is on it, but I'm sorry about that one. I'm sorry, Pat, John, if you ever hear this.
I mean, we've been lucky.
The music was phenomenal because you're an amazing musician, but the cover, and I had to do what he asked me to do, which was the problem. he wanted
Right.
this, and he wanted that, and he wanted that type.
That's probably the only cover that happened like that in our life. And I got to be honest about it. It really
Yeah,
is.
that
I
was
mean, it's
the
the
only
only
one.
time there. But
Yes.
considering all the work that we've done and all the covers we've done, that's amazing. And we never had anything changed. By the way, guys,
Well,
nothing has ever been changed.
I love when you say Lou Reed had no feed, like not that he didn't have any feedback, but he was like, because I think that's a real artist saying, hey, I do music.
Yeah.
You're doing the
Yeah.
packaging and I respect your art. So and there's a reason why you're on the project, because we trust you. So that's a nice feeling when you have that exchange between artists, when someone is able to say like, no, you do your thing. Like I want you to do your thing. That's why
I've got to mention something. I worked on Fear of Music, Talking Heads, and
well,
that's
I got to bring that.
Co-designed that with Jerry Harrison and David Byrne, the whole thing, Chris Franz and Tina Weymouth. But that was an amazing combination of people, designers working together on when you have the elements that we had, and Jerry had the concept of the embossed pattern, which is on the cover, and then I fulfilled the typography thing with David Byrne. But that worked out so smoothly, and we'd be interviewed, and like someone would say, "Did you freak out working with David Byrne?" Of course, I freaked out. I mean, David Byrne, you get thrown in with David Byrne, it's like, oh my God. Because if you look at David Byrne, he's not exactly like, hi, how are you, guy? Put his arms around you. He's not like that. He's very anal. So but I worked, he loved my typography. I would hear from the art director. He said, David loves your typography. And by the way, I had a training with Yale design instructors. So I had a very formal, one of the best school training in design, by the way. And I didn't realize how good it was until I started working. And of course, that album was nominated for a Grammy in packaging. And but I got to tell you, I mean, things would work out. Another great story is Billy Squier, "Don't Say No" album, where he walked in my office, and this is the other thing. He turned down Hypnosis's concept for his album. I freaked out. I mean, Hypnosis was the biggest company in England that put out, their background, their profile. I said, oh my God, here's another one. I'm going to have a real trip with this. But he loved everything conceived for him. And he said, just pick one. He was really easy. But that turned out to be a great cover, very raw looking cover. And the album's very raw. And by the way, that album is one of the most phenomenal rock and roll albums. Reinhold Mack did the producing it, which was referred to him by Brian May. Brian May didn't have time to do it, so he said, Billy, we'll give you Reinhold Mack. Why don't you try Reinhold Mack? And that album in sound is unreal. Because of that, it became a monster, multi-platinum, right? What's interesting is Billy never went into that sound again, which really blew my mind. I mean, that was a raw sound on that album. And he never did that before or after, which blew my mind totally, because that sound and the songs were unbelievable on that album.
Awesome. I gotta ask you about working at, you mentioned a lot of Sire bands, but as a lifelong Ramones fan, we interviewed Monty A. Melnick, and this is how we all touched base. You really liked that interview, and you reached out to me and said, hey, if you ever want to talk rock and roll, and I said, yes, I do. So but tell me about working with the Ramones. You made a few album covers with them, correct?
Well, I was thrown into Sire Records through an illustrator called Stephen Taylor. Let me start with that. And he designed Richard Hell and the Voidoids' Blank Generation. I ended up doing the type on it. And then the art director said, listen, I'll throw you in with people. I can't promise you anything. I'll throw you in because he liked my work. And he said, and one of the first groups was the Ramones. And this was interesting. I got along with all of them. I mean, Joey would call up the office. He found out I was going to the dentist one day, and he called up the office and said, how is Spencer? And the art director says, Spencer. Joey calls up the office to find out how you are. He doesn't call up the office to find out how anybody is. I mean, that's a great story. But I got along with all of them.
Right.
And
good for you. I hear Johnny wasn't the easiest guy in the world to work with.
No, I was on the Marky Ramone show on Sirius, and we were talking about those Ramones albums. And Road to Ruin worked like a charm with John Holmstrom doing the artwork. The End of the Century with Mick Rock photograph. And that photograph's interesting because they wanted them to look commercial, so they didn't want the leather jackets on the front cover. I put them on the inner sleeve. And the group, what was funny is the inner sleeve is the picture, like it's like posterized picture with them with the but it's a great shot. And the group wanted that picture to be on the front cover. But
yeah, because of the Ramones, they had a look, they had the jackets. And this time around, they're like, hey, well, if you would look at this, they're like, hey, we're sensitive.
But you know what? I love this cover because Mick Rock, who shot it, if you know his background, and we worked with him, phenomenal with color. His photographs are he does these things with primary colors a lot, and that's what makes that cover. That was a monster cover. I mean, I thought I didn't care about the leather jacket. That photograph is iconic. You know, it's just. But that's a great album, and also I worked very easily with them. I did 45s also, like Rock and Roll High School. I worked on a lot of, and I also worked with Talking Heads on 45s. But you know, the Ramones were a very cool group. And then Judith comes into my life, and we work on Dee Dee's solo album.
Oh, Dee Dee King, right?
Standing in the Spotlight.
Yeah.
And people would say they don't like the album, but buy it for the cover. And Bob Gruen sent me a bunch of photographs, which are amazing black and whites. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not going to do one on the front, one on the back. I'm going to use as many photographs as I can on the front and the back. So if you look at the cover, you see multi-pictures, Bob Gruen photographs on the front and back. And Judith did the logo, which is an amazing logo for him. And the cover is beautiful. I mean, the cover is very beautiful. But, you know, we worked on Dee Dee's album, and the Ramones were a good trip in my life, you know?
Oh,
yeah. I've fallen in love with music again in a sense that for the last few months, I've been almost under a spell that I just need to have every album I've ever loved, but on vinyl, the definitive sound representation of what they were always supposed to sound like. But I preferred only buy vinyl when they were made in a time when vinyl had existed and those mixes were intended for vinyl, because sometimes I can tell when something's digitally just put back on wax and they're like, look, kids, vinyl. I'll put on an original from the 70s or 80s and hear all these high ends and low ends that I've never heard exist in an album I'm so familiar with. So that was really cool to relearn all this. So I've been trying to track down the even though I love the Ramones albums in the 80s and there's a box set that I drool over every other day, but I'm just like, can't spend that money yet, but I will. But in the meantime, I am trying to track down Road to Ruin. I am trying to Rocket to Russia, or even, you know, I don't think I've ever actually heard End of the Century on vinyl, but I'm assuming with all those extra instrumentation that Phil Spector put with that huge wall of sound, that's probably the best way that album will ever
that album's interesting. The story of that album's interesting because they were fighting all the time. I mean, the group was fighting with Phil Spector. It turned out to be a war. The type bills would be astronomical. Everything on that album was like, oh my God. First, they think they're going to be hooked up with a great producer, the wall of sound, the whole thing. Turns out to be a war, literally. And, you know, the gun thing is involved with that, what Marky talks about in his book. But, you know, it's like that album's a really good album. It really is. You know what I really like is Road to Ruin a lot. Okay. And the first album with a Roberta Bailey photograph, the black and white. I love those albums myself, but you know, it's a whole trip with the Ramones. I mean, and then I even like the albums that Richie Ramone's on. The Richie Ramone.
I love the Richie Ramone albums. I love them. Too Tough to Die. Incredible. Yep. Animal Boy, Halfway to Sanity. They're just gorgeous albums. And the albums I'm talking about, how every other day I'm kind of like, I feel twitchy. Just trying not to order it off of Amazon because it's selling $215.
Your record.
Yeah, I know. $215 and then the shipping. And I'm trying to find it in town first. But anyway, it has, you know, it has two okay Marky albums where it's after end of the century. They don't know what to do with themselves, and they make Pleasant Dreams, which is also very, pop. And then they make Subterranean Jungle, which is the most 80s sounding album I think they've ever made. Yeah, I believe it has Joan Jett and the Blackhearts producer on it. And then they make Too Tough to Die, and Richie comes in, and he's just a force of nature. He's a different drummer. Marky is an amazing drummer. He's fast, and he is steady as a freight train. But I think he was also he was brought in the band. He was trained by Tommy to play the Ramones way,
right,
and stick to there. And like Judith, the way you came into album cover designs of why don't we put it on the side? And then everyone else is like, you don't do that. That's not what you do with albums. Richie Ramone comes in and is like, yeah, let's play really fast here, and then we'll slow it down, and then we'll do these other type of beats. And then meanwhile, a band who is, over 10 years into their career are trying all these new things. And it is because of this new idea that Richie brought in. So I love that era, but also in this box set is the album that Marky comes back with. And this is now a sober Marky Ramone, a focused Marky Ramone. And it's wonderful too. It's called Brain Drain, and it's absolutely awesome. So it just, I'm a big Ramones fan here. So that's really cool that, Joey would call up the office and say, how you doing? How's he doing? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I also want to bring out about what's happening with us is that we're tied with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now, really big. We're the only, listen to this, the only designers to have our own archival collection in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame of our work. No other designer has that. And besides that, our 45 books are in there, and the interviews now that we do are in there. So we're in 3 parts of the collection, which no other music designer is even mentioned. And you think of all the great music designers. I mean, the ones that were Grammy.
That's amazing. And I've been to the Rock Hall many times.
Yeah.
I went just last year. I took my mom. My mom's 75, and she was like, my mom loves the Eagles. She's like, I love the Eagles. Steely Dan was opening up for the Eagles. So I was like, Mom, let's go to Cleveland and go see the Eagles. So we went. Steely Dan canceled because whatever, it doesn't matter why. Donald Fagen, something went on with Donald Fagen, so we ended up getting Steve Miller instead. And it was a great night to be with my mom, and it was a great road trip. But I said to my mom, if we're going to Cleveland, we have to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is incredible, and if anyone's never been, if you're a music fan and you've never been there, it makes no sense. You have to go. And it's great. It's incredible that you say that some of the stuff is, that you're a part of that, because you walk through that place, and it's impressive what they've gathered and what they put together, as far as music memorabilia, and just the emotion that it evokes out of people when they walk through there. Like my mom wasn't an Elvis fan. My mom was a Ricky Nelson fan. So, so when she walked by and she saw Ricky Nelson's guitar, she just lost her shit, And then here I am walking by, and they've just added all the hip hop stuff. So I see all the Public Enemy stuff, and I'm losing my shit. So it's just fun to see like the generations that can go and really, really enjoy themselves in a place like that.
And how it started was Lou Reed and Joan Jett were inducted the same year. So that year I got a call from Kenny Laguna, one of the managers of Joan Jett, and he wanted some pictures, and I didn't have that, but I sent some other stuff we had on Lou Reed or something like that. And then I get a call later after the induction. They said, Hey, Spencer, do you and Judith, do you want to contribute to the vinyl collection? I said, the vinyl collection? They have an amazing, if nobody knows it, they have an amazing, huge vinyl collection. And they don't want the records. They just want the covers. So I sent the covers of some of our best. And now, of course, it's in that collection, which is a great honor. But it was like the idea of that is amazing, and for some reason, we're really connected with them. They like our interviews. They like our books. They like whatever we're doing. So we have an amazing relationship with them. And I think it's really amazing. I also wish, and we've been interviewing some famous music designers now so that they could be part of this collection. Bringing them to be interviewed is a big thing. Nobody else would do this, I'm telling you. Mostly you always hear musicians being interviewed. But we decided that these people should be respected. So we've done interviews,
Sure.
and they're going in the archival collection. They're interviews. So that's another part of it. These are other designers that have designed major packaging for the Rock Hall inductees. So we're doing that in a series. But it's a big honor to be in an institution, to be respected. Judith called me up one day. I remember this. After I told her about it, she says, "What are they doing this?" I said, "Judith, don't ask. don't ask." It's like people, Jay or Ryan, it's like they don't say anything, but it's what they do, right? It's what Judith says. It's what actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, I agree. I could not agree more.
That's fascinating, guys. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know you guys have a show on YouTube called Indie Cafe. That's very cool. And you've had on there's this whole Seymour Stein from the president of Sire Records tribute. And you could see wonderful interviews you've done with other people. Before we go, could you just tell everybody about that amazing show that you guys do?
Yeah, it's called Indie Cafe 2 with the number 2 WO. It's on YouTube, all the interviews. We also have a site, Indie Cafe 2, on Facebook, which you could see all the interviews. And we just interview various people. Now we're with the Rock Hall, we're focusing on people like we had an interview with Lenny Kaye, for instance, Patti Smith Group. Where a lot of the music designers that have won, John Holmstrom, who we talked about with the Ramones, Monty Melnick interviews going into the archive, different varied people that are connected with rock and roll inductees, or Ricky Byrd will be interviewed on 2024. He was
Sylvia
a member
Reed,
of Sylvia Reed, big time, is in already.
Yeah.
And this the end of this month, we're having Steve Averill, who designed a lot of the U2 packaging, a major designer in U2's world, which the Rock Hall did a show on at one point on U2. So our connection with the Rock Hall is very big right now, and those people in the different music areas are being, like Lynn Goldsmith's going to be interviewed on our Patti Smith book. That's another one. So it's like, different people connected with the Rock Hall.
And it's interesting because they have really very cool stories to tell. You're not going to hear them anywhere else. So.
Yeah,
they're like, we're approaching it very differently. We're not going to like you're doing with us. It's almost like, tell us your life, not like what you've done recently. I used to do that, like, what's your latest CD? Talk about. It's going to be like their life. So it's a learning tool type of interview with everybody, which is really great. And the Rock Hall is going to be showing some of these things, by the way. They're telling me, we did a very film. Talk about filmmaker. You guys interviewed. We had Ethan Silverman, who did the T-Rex tribute movie on interview.
Nice.
And that's a big film. That's a really cool film. The T-Rex tribute.
Before we go, I want to ask each of you, and each of you answer separately. What were the album covers that you remember seeing when you were young that blew your mind, that you still think about today, that might have influenced you on what direction you went into designing? Let me start with you, Spencer.
Well, okay. For me, it's like, I always loved the Led Zeppelin first album with a blown up dirigible on the front cover. George Hardy design, something simple like that. But I love the concept of that. It was just the picture and the group pictures on the back. So I always loved that idea, that there wasn't just the picture of the group on the front. But I loved albums like Physical Graffiti that Peter Corson I was very close with. He designed Some Girls, Physical Graffiti. He did a lot of die cut stuff, special packaging with the vinyl. I got into that, a big deal. That was a big deal with me, looking at it and say, wow, I wish I could do something like that. So, those I'm talking about some really great, I don't know, there's, of course, I love the Beatles album, like Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah.
And, certain ones that really stood out that were iconic.
You like stuff that pushed the boundaries.
Yeah. In fact, we have a vinyl show, a cover show, which is a 12-minute cover show of LPs and 45s we really like, that are beautiful, that are on YouTube. It's called the Vinyl Show 12-inch and 7-inch. That's a cool one to see on YouTube. And that's like covers that both of us really like, LPs and 45. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful show, actually, for 12 minutes. It's just pictures with music in the background, but you see the images, the beautiful covers,
Before I go to Judith, I just want to comment. You were mentioning physical graffiti. I took now he's 20, but at the time he was 16. I took my son to New York City, and I took him to St. Mark's Place to show him the building, the physical graffiti building. That's the cover. And one thing he was like, "Dad, I don't understand. How is it so tall and it fit on an album cover?" And I said, "They took a floor out. They took a floor out." He's like, "What do you mean?" And then I showed him the album cover. He's like, "So yeah, they took a floor out." And I love.
So wait a minute, I got to tell you about that cover, Jay. Sure. I interviewed Peter Corriston many years ago about that cover, and he told me they had an architectural camera set up in an East Village on 5th or 4th Street, and he had to line up the windows of all the buildings to do that shot. It's very interesting how he did that shot. And so he had to have a very straight lineup. Everything had to be perfect. He had an architectural camera, he called it. And that's a setup of the front cover to shoot it for the cover.
It's crazy. And then that whole story of them having to take a floor off because it didn't fit into the square. So Judith, what was the cover that you remember seeing? That
there are many covers that I remember from my youth that I absolutely loved. One of them was Big Brother and the Holding Company, Janis Joplin's cover with that was one. And then there was I loved practically all of Dylan's covers. I don't know why. I guess I always liked, most of them had him on the cover, and I liked looking at him. So I like that. And then there was Love. Love was one of my favorite bands. It's still Love. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, of course.
It still is my top 10, one of my top 10 bands. And they're what was the name of the cover with that looks like the
Forever Changes.
Africa.
Forever Changes, Judith.
Forever Changes cover. Yeah, I love that.
That's your favorite. Love that.
And
great
there's
album.
many more that influenced me, but yeah, there's a couple of them. The late 60s, early 70s LP. There's so many of them.
Well, I'll share two with you, and you'll probably both understand this being packaging nerds. One for me was The Police, Ghost in the Machine. Just the simplicity of the digital and then turning that into their faces. I thought that was brilliant. And then I got that as I got older. And the one when I was a kid that haunted me, my parents were big fans of Cat Stevens. So my mom had Buddha in the chocolate box. And that cover, and then all the stuff inside was just like, whoa, blew my mind. Ryan, what was one for you?
When I was a teenager, I loved this band Rancid and an album called "And Out Come the Wolves."
Yeah,
and it was a black and white photo of just a guy, and he's got a mohawk, and he's just kind of down like this, and the type, as you guys excel in. It was a black and white photo, but a big red Rancid logo right at the top, and it says "And Out Come the Wolves" at the bottom, and it just, I don't know, it shot me like a bullet. It just was like, wow. Whoa. And I suppose another one would be a Green Day Doogie, and it's just it doesn't have the band on the cover, but it's that kind of thing where I don't even think it was first put out in a time when vinyl still existed. It was about 94, so vinyl was really on its way out. But it's one of those examples of why an album cover matters, because there's all these little details. There's all these tiny little drawings that only blown up have I fucking finally seen everything these stupid animated dogs are doing. They're throwing crap at each other. There's things exploding, all this other stuff. And it makes me want to buy the vinyl just because I'm, optically challenged and I couldn't see all of it for most of my life. And now I can without looking like Mr. Magoo. Yeah.
It's amazing. There are certain musicians like Talking Heads who are graphically minded, who do continuously great stuff, as you know, the continuity for them. But what blows my mind are the musicians that have a lot of money that do really bad packaging. I'm telling you, there's
packaging
so many
can ruin an album. It ruins the music for me. I swear to God, it like an album with the wrong colors, the album doesn't sound heavier anymore. And then there's another album that's kind of poppy, but because it's got such dark colors, I thought it sounded heavier. I don't know what it is. It's like hypnosis.
Listen, before the internet and before we had such access to everybody on a daily basis, the album was everything. And I remember, you know, I would study the album packaging while I would listen to it. And the only pictures you had of these musicians, unless you bought magazines, were the pictures on the album covers. And you would imagine all these things. And I remember when I finally met Jim Kerr and interviewed him from Simple Minds, he came down into the dressing room. My wife was next to me and I kind of started tearing up. She's like, why? I go, you don't understand. I've been staring at this dude's picture my whole life. And here he is in front of me. So what you guys do is very, very powerful. And I'm really, really glad we got to spend some time with you. I think it's important that, you know, voices like yours are heard, because you guys are, you know, you're an important part of so many people's lives. And you're like the pushers, you know, you're like you're the ones that are bringing the product to the masses that they're holding in their hands. And this is what a lot will shape their opinion on what they're listening to, and so many things. So packaging is so important. And I'm glad we got to talk to you guys today. I'm glad we were.
Thank you. And it's an honor to be on your show, guys. You do a great show. Yeah. I know about your show. You do
thank
a great
you so
show.
much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much.
What a nice pair of people.
Very nice. And stories for days, dude.
Stories for days, and really cool. You know, my favorite part about the entire interview is just John Bon Jovi was this nice kid, and Spencer didn't get it.
Yeah, I know. This music sucks.
And Judith, who has eyes, is like, yeah, but he's really good looking. And it's fascinating to see people on that rock and roll journey, but especially you know, with the Ramones, anything with the Ramones, someone would be like, oh yeah, I took a shit next to Joey once. Be like, wow. But to hear like Joey used to call the dentist and check if Spencer was all right, like that's so cool and sweet.
No, it's that. And look, I love Talking Heads. You know, working with the Talking Heads, working with fucking Lou Reed, dude. Like Lou Reed was in the Velvet Underground. Like Ryan, they were part of such a fucking important part of pop culture was. You know, the Velvet Underground, Andy Warhol, all that stuff, man. It all happened at the same time. And, you know, anybody that works side by side with someone like that just blows my mind. So, yeah, that was really, really a real treat to have them on. I have to tell you, man, I enjoyed every moment of that. And I love the respect that they have for each other. You know, it's just super cool, dude. Super cool.
So during the interview, we had brought up the 80s era of the Ramones and how cool I thought Richie's era was, and Richie's a really cool dude. During my whole vinyl buying spree, including one of my white whales, which it was a record of Trick or Treat, Fastway Trick or Treat for the film Trick or Treat. Yeah. The other one was the Ramones box set, the Sire Records. I saw it on Amazon, and I would check every day on Facebook Market, every day on Amazon, wondering if I should take the plunge, because I am not a knee-jerk reaction, pull the trigger type of buyer. I think about shit. Yeah. And Pepe, who works at Lenoise, who is a dear friend of ours, survivor of a heart attack, an angel on earth. We would have lost an angel. I'm so glad not only did he survive because he's a nice fellow, but it just what I'm about to tell you just proves why we need more angels like Pepe. Yes. And stores like Lenoise. So I had mentioned to Pepe, man, I've been obsessed with this. If you ever see this, he's like, you know, I think someone sold that to us. And I don't think we sold it since. No, somewhere it's in the basement somewhere. And this is 2 months ago. No, I'm like, huh, okay. So, you know, I'm kind of like there. I go to Illinois since, and I kind of like, you know, enough time goes by where I kind of like say I should just can't. If I'm buying stuff, you know, it's not that much money. And one night on Amazon, I wasn't even drunk, but this sounds like a drunk thing. I'm like, I'm just going to do it, man. I'm just going to buy it. So I type in my credit card stuff and I push the button and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to buy it. And then not 2 minutes later, I'm like, wait a second. And I look at the name of the Amazon store and all that. I'm like, oh, this is a bullshit store. I should cancel this order immediately. Right. Like it's got a crappy thumbnail. The names looks bullshit. I'm like, it just doesn't feel real. Something doesn't feel right. So I canceled for the first time ever. I canceled an Amazon order. I'm like, okay, brother. Not 2 days later, Pepe sends me a picture and says, found it. and I was willing to spend 216 before tax and shipping to get this thing. He's like, yeah, my boss is selling it for 175. I'm like, I could not have typed it any faster. I want it. Give it. I'll get it tonight. And the thing is, this record collection.
Yeah, show it to me.
Right here. It is unopened yet.
Ah,
it
nice.
was sealed. This is the magic of Illinois. They got someone to sell it to them. Sealed, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Not stepped on, not licked. Sealed. And the reason why I haven't opened it up yet is because I hug it on a nightly basis. And also dude, I look in the dictionary, you'll see this face when you type a Neil word. There was this magic moment that happened, and I would love it if Richie Ramone ever came on the show because I would tell them the story.
Right.
There's this magic moment that happened, whereas at our friend Patrick Barbashaw, who helps us at Comic-Con, is an amazing editor.
Love him.
At this birthday party, I picked up a guitar, and without mentioning anything, I started playing one of these songs from these albums, and him and two other people, like a fucking episode of Glee, all of a sudden turned around and started singing in unison every fucking word of the song. And I stopped. I started another one. Same shit. So I said to him, I'm like, listen, man, if we're going to listen to this record, it's got to be me, you, your ex-bandmate, Keenan, everybody who gives a fuck about enough of these albums where we could all glee, or in High School Musical, a synchronization moment in which we'll never forget. We will have a proper listening party, a proper unveiling. We will make a video of all three of us together gushing the shit out of this physical media in a way that it deserves, because getting this it's fucking magic. Right. And I don't want to rush magic. I don't want to underplay magic. I want to live in this because this doesn't happen.
Right.
You know, finding
That's
under
awesome.
a pile, it's like fucking finding a mogwai. Like, it doesn't happen.
I got to tell you, man, have you been to the store yet?
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So I've been there. I've gone downstairs and seen what Julian buys and what he has. And he's got like fucking treasures down there, dude. Like they've got a lot of cool shit. So I got to tell you, if we're ever going to do anything with vinyl, and we're going to do something with the Soundburger and Audio Technica and all that, we're going to do it with Illinois, like 100%. Cause they're not only are they good people, like two of my friends work there. Like Pepe is my friend. Kevin Bonix is my buddy. And Julian's my buddy too. I mean, I love those guys. So yes, they're wonderful. They've helped me find stuff. Like, I'll tell you something. Let me just show you two things I found there.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't buy a lot of records, but
that's because people keep giving them to you when they're gold, because you help them in their careers.
Well, I got this, which was Record Store Day, and I bought this because I didn't fucking care because I love Public Enemy. So this is like a live recording for 2003. Yeah, never released on vinyl. So it's a three vinyl record from Record Store Day. I don't know if it's numbered, but it was pretty hard to get. So I got this from Pepe. Got a great deal on it too. But what I did get, I already put them away, but you know, I'm going to pull them out. Hang on, give me a second. So there's a movie that came out in the early 90s that kind of documented the beginning, the explosion of grunge in Seattle and stuff. And it was called Singles. It was Cameron Crowe.
Yeah.
Mondo put out Singles, the soundtrack.
Nice.
And, you know, like Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, Chris Cornell, Paul Westerberg, Mother Love Bone, Mudhoney, Screaming Trees. Like, it's fucking 90s. It's from 92. So this Mondo recording, and then they put out a fucking part 2.
Wow.
There's 2 of them. So these like are fucking impossible to find for a decent price. They're like in the hundreds now, and they found them at cost for me, you know? And I was like, I don't buy a lot of records, but when I'm looking for a certain thing, like Public Enemy, I'll buy Czarface, I'll buy whatever it is. But otherwise, it's just like, I really just buy soundtracks now. These 2, man, were just like so hard to find, and they found them for me. So they're great. I love those guys. Really, really love them. They're a wonderful store. So check out Illinois. Definitely check them out. We don't get endorsed by them. We buy our stuff from them. They're just a wonderful store that we like to support. So
Ditto. And today I'm wearing Doyle merchandise, and we are not endorsed by them. I just really fucking love the band.
You just like Doyle. That's cool. He's fucking rad. Okay, listen, Ryan. I took this out because I knew you were hot, and I thought this would put you in a good mood because I know you love Christmas. So this is a Christmas card that I got from my brother.
Nice. Oh yeah.
I thought it would make you cooler. There's that I wanted to show you. I want to do, because I always talk about Studio House Designs t-shirts. This is a sticker that I got in my Thing with my Thing shirt.
Oh, I love it.
Sticker, and it says, "Watch out, the Thing is imitating me and doesn't understand how a car works and is definitely going to crash."
I love Studio House Designs, man. Great company. I've missed a couple of drops because, you know, I'm like a cat with a laser pointer, but it doesn't mean that every time I see something on social media, it just makes me feel warm inside. So regardless, if you're on the fence about being a customer, follow their social media, because every now and then something will happen and there will be a little explosion in your brain when you realize that they just made a shirt that you almost willed into existence by pure joy. Yeah. And you should probably jump in on that.
And also check out our friends over at Audio Technica. They have incredible audio equipment that I think you will absolutely love. And our friends, of course, at Heartbeat Hot Sauce, the heartbeat of the Rockman Power Hour. Use our promo code Rockman20 and get 20% off your entire order. All right, Ryan, coming up in the next couple of weeks, the day that you see this episode is probably the day that the Fantasia Film Festival is starting. So over the next 2 weeks, keep it locked on our social media, on our Instagram, on our Facebook, and possibly very much on YouTube. We will be doing wall-to-wall coverage of Fantasia 2024. You, me, and our trusty sidekick, Marco, will be on boots on the ground, giving you all the updates from Fantasia. There's some incredible movies this year that are dropping, world premieres. We're going to be talking to the actors, to the directors. So make sure, if you are a fan of film, and we are big fans of film, we're going to be having a film-focused 2 weeks, definitely. So you might not see regular episodes, but there will be lots of extra bonus content all over our socials. So if you're listening to this and you have not liked our Facebook page or liked our Instagram page or our TikTok page, do all of that, because we'll have exclusive content that you won't see anywhere else except those platforms. So make sure you have it locked, and check out our new website, therockmanpowerhour.com. Also want to thank my co-host, Ryan Stick. I want to thank our producer, Julia Kajerski, and all of our sponsors that help make this podcast work. And thanks to all of you. We know how much you support and love this podcast. We appreciate it. Whenever we see you guys in the street, you tell us. And thank you, because if we didn't have you guys listening, we truly would be talking to ourselves. And I know I've taken that line from somebody else, but it's the truth. We'll see you next time on the Rockman Power Hour. Hey, thanks so much for watching the podcast. We really appreciate your support. And if you're enjoying the podcast, click this link right over here to watch the next episode, and click right over here and subscribe. And that way you won't miss anything.